So I've definitely taken the idea of the gender issue and I've crafted it unto my own, in a sense, in the sense of gendering belief, gendering an understanding, allowing the experience of the conversation passing through stages of growth and development to gender and identity, breaking, as I would like, or as I am putting it, there's a stereotypical experience that we're supposed to have. There's a traditional experience that we are supposed to have. In that traditional experience, we are actually supposed to break it. And everything that we have been reviewing, everything that we have been just looking at, seeing how the Bible works, that illustration of the Exodus is something so precise that you just can't get away from that as being a model for the kind of experience that we ought to be having, or we should be, um, the Bible is letting us know to have, or to personally experience, for the purpose of breaking the norm to have a personal relationship, not simply with the living God, not simply with, words, even though I like to say these things, but with the character of our devotional conversation. And there's we've seen verses, but in the book of Daniel, what is it, chapter 4, where he's talking to the king, and the counsel that Daniel gives is to break off your falsehood, break off your wrong, break off by righteousness. And then in the book of Hosea, you can go, what is that, chapter 10, you can go and it reads, you know, sow and reap, break up the fallow ground of your heart. So there's counsel throughout, and it continues to say, so that you may receive the rain of righteousness, or that righteousness may be rained upon you. And then you can go to Proverbs 1 and verse 23, where it says, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. So there's a process of breaking up that the mind within the Bible is calling for. Our conversation is supposed to have its thoughts and its feelings broken up. We are to break up the pattern. It's cool that we are in it. It's cool that we are and have been within whatever particular denominated understanding or theory that we have been in. But the experience is supposed to go deeper. It's supposed to be more meaningful, because it's not going to be as meaningful as it ought to be if it is simply relying on routine or traditional expectations, or if the experience is dictated. If we have a scripted experience, that it's really not going to be as meaningful as it should be. And I also have to say this, that there are individuals that would prefer a scripted experience, and the experience that I have been outlining is not for everyone. It's not for the individual wanting a scripted experience. There is confusion without script. There is a not knowing without a dictated experience. In a sense, religious tradition kind of stops thinking because it tells you what is and you just do it. That's the kind of order that it has, and many can function through that. But there are others that will enter into such an experience and will feel limited, will feel that it is limiting, will feel that it is restricting conscience, will feel that it is restricting behavior, feel that it is restricting understanding and the act of having an understanding. The Bible would get at those individuals that would have an experience that is, free without the constraint of another conscience over it. We and just put it into this perspective, because if we had to have somebody physically, literally telling us what to do all the time, um, over our bodies, over ourself, telling us what to do over and over as a presence, we would find that very aggravating. But for some reason, that aggravation isn't felt when it's about religious tradition due to the order. And there's a lot that I could say about that and why that is fundamental to an experience. But I'm just placing it into a perspective that is normal. Like if there was physically somebody over us, telling us how to live, telling us how to dress, telling us what to eat, telling us what to say, telling us who to see, telling us when to do what we are to do, telling us just how to live. We would find that absolutely aggravating because we're not living. That's not living. There's a violation there. Well, it's the same thing. Our conversation is a body of its own, a body of understanding. If we can understand how the body of our understanding should feel with such a stamp over it, and in the sense of how we would feel with such a stamp over us, well, then we would be able to let our conversation breathe, let its conscience do what it needs to do in order for it to be what it needs to be. And what we have been seeing in the verses, Daniel, Hosea, Proverbs just now, they're outlining a process of breaking up. If the Bible is letting us know in Hosea to break up our fallow ground, that means that we are supposed to open up the stereotypical experience and the heart attached to it. That's the whole thing. So you can't have anything growing from a ground without a ground. You can't have anything growing from a ground without a ground. You can't have you, or I should say, you can't have your devotional conversations conscience spring up without there first being a ground for it to spring up out of. And so when we're placed into the position that we are in, which is our conversation is formed within the religious world, our conversation is formed within the ground or by the ground of denominated theory, denominated action, denominated belief. That's the ground of our experience. The thing is that a seed is supposed to go into that ground. We may think we may think our experience is blossoming the seed. We may think that our experience is the seed. We may think that the ground of our belief is it. We may think that's all, but that's not all. That's not it. Something is supposed to sprout up from that ground. Something is supposed to break that ground of denominated understanding, of theoretical opinion, of religious traditional conception. Something is supposed to break that ground to sprout up. And the something that is supposed to break that down, break up that ground for sprouting up is our conversation's character. We may have whatever ground of religious, holistic, spiritual, philosophical, doctrinal, biblical understanding that we have. We may have what we have. But the ground of what we have is supposed to continually be tilled, worked, broken up, so that the gems of what we think we know, so that the gems of what we think we know that ground is supposed to produce will shoot up. And that's what we are to be consuming as an experience. Not anything from anybody else's garden, but the things from our own. And then we can share with others. And then we can do some commerce as time goes on and as time progresses and we begin to further understand the type of character that we are developing. That's the experience. It's an experience to make us independent, to make us industrious, with the living God in mind, with having passed and continuing to pass through that experience of an exodus, not letting us or ourselves believe that the ground of our belief is just it. The ground of our belief needs to be tilled and needs to be worked. The Bible lets us know in the book of Proverbs that them that will till their ground shall be satisfied with bread. Them that will till their ground shall be satisfied with bread. The point being is that the more that we till the ground of our belief, the more that we till the ground of our naturally denominated understanding with the scriptures, with nothing else but using the scriptures to till that ground, that's our tilling instrument. The words of the Bible are our tilling instrument. When we can allow our tilling instrument to work the ground of our heart, which is the ground of our belief, we will be able to have fair ground, fair soil for whatever should sprout up for us to uncover and for us to implement and for sustenance and for use to anyone who would encounter our garden. That experience only happens as we gender the identity of our devotional conversation. And that involves risking its ground. That involves risking its ground. The mind within the scriptures is a mind that is not content with the individual remaining within their denominated structure. The mind within the Bible is a mind that is not content with the individual conversation remaining within the structure of their understanding. Why? Because what we understand, the way we understand it, is manipulated by the ground that we are on. Everything that we receive, everything that we inherit, everything that we adopt from whatever denominated sect we find ourselves in lifestyle matching and then going into, it is manipulating how we should perceive the things that we should perceive. Never mind that once we are in this landscape, our genuine concern for studying the scriptures or for wanting to fades away and is replaced by the then adopted or inherited concern of the denominated landscape. Well, Bible would allow the individual, although you have that ground, although you have that, although that's established for you, and you have built up an understanding and an establishment with it, you need to till that ground of your belief. Till the ground of the heart of your belief. If you can till the ground of the heart of your belief, you will reap bread. And reaping bread only happens as rain falls down onto that ground, and that rain falling down upon that ground is the outpouring of words. Outpouring of words. I will make known my words to you, Proverbs 1:23. I will make known my words to you. I will pour out my spirit unto you. The pouring out of that spirit is equivalent with the understanding of words. We are supposed to understand words. That's what that rain is. Outpouring of understanding. But that really can't happen if our conversation is locked into a scripted experience. Because it's really difficult to think in an experience that is dictated to you because you're not supposed to think. That's why it's scripted. It's scripted because you're not supposed to think. You're just supposed to do. But while you're doing, it'll happen in everyone. It doesn't happen at the same time, but it will happen in everyone. While you're doing, eventually, you're going to begin to question why you're doing what you're doing. You're going to begin to see things differently. You're going to begin to see how things are reacting, not just with you, but with others. And that investigation is going to lead to a concern for the condition of the conversation. And then soon enough, a memory of our initial position for wanting to be in the Bible and wanting to rely on the Bible will surface once again. Why? Because our conversation is calling for a gendered identity. And I'm still playing off of that popular gender issue and using that term in a way that is, I think, suitable because that's what the Exodus is about. You have a people spiritually enslaved, wanting to do what they need to do for their God, but they can't because they are spiritually enslaved to work for the more dominant religious tradition. Well, a movement happens, and that movement gets that oppressed conversation out into a land of liberty, especially for its own self and for it to prosper. And now it becomes the dominant persuasion. That's the same, except it's internal. Our conversation born into the religious world, we don't realize it, but it is enslaved by the concepts and by the theories and by the routines and by the practices, by the outcomes of it. But there needs to be an exodus for that conversation to dwell and to exist within a land fortified for its own self, that it may then become the dominant position, the dominant persuasion for our human being, for the good of our human being, I should say, but for its own thoughts and feelings, for its own character. So there's a process of growth, there's a process of development, but there is also a process of breaking up, and breaking up for the purpose of understanding identity. Just as much as we are concerned with identity, our body of understanding is also concerned with the same. So we have to give our conversation, we have to give the body of our understanding the right to begin to speak and to feel for its own self. As I've been saying, we have to take a step back and willingly be able to take a step back. That's what the Exodus is about. Not allowing the script to do, not allowing the force, the forced experience that is really not coming from our conscience or from our stream of consciousness, but it's simply adopted or inherited. So if we're able to do that, if we're able to realize that what we have inherited or adopted is not coming from our stream of consciousness and is actually weighing against it, and are getting out of that, well, we're doing the right thing. That's Bible narrative. That's Bible narrative. But the Bible doesn't just end it there. The Bible doesn't just end it with, okay, I'm out. I can live my life the way I want to live it. I'm good. I'm out. That's just right. No, there's more, because what is within us is still hungering and thirsting for more. What is within us has to be taken care of. What is within us has to understand why it's doing what it's doing, why it's calling out the way that it's calling out. What is within us needs to be able to grasp for its own self, culture, identity. It's not content with the stereotype of denominated perception, with the stereotype of a denominated experience, doing this, doing that, believing this, believing that. It's not content. And it's not content because it needs more. And it needs more because it's realizing that its human being is actually wanting more out of the experience as a benefit. And so the mind within the scriptures would have us, through various illustrations, understand that the breaking up of what we perceive to be a denominated understanding or a denominated experience or a traditional scope or our opinion of a traditional scope really needs to be broken up and handled. We have to be able to let our conversation identify who it is. We have to be able to take that risk. And again, like I've been saying, this isn't for everyone. This isn't for everyone. This experience is not for everyone, because not everyone will care to respect their conversation in this way. Not everybody will care to see that the body of their belief is an entity that has to be fed as an entity, and with thoughts and feelings as an entity, individual, distinct from our human being, yet one and the same. Not everybody will care for the time that it takes to rationalize what is going on within them. But the scriptures would have us do so. The scriptures would have us do so because it is only by this means that our heart is bettered. whether that is the heart of our devotional conversation or whether that is the heart of our human being. Our heart will be bettered. The experience will better our character. It is character development. All of this is character development. It's character development so that by the time you need to be able to do what you need to be able to do in life, you're able to. And with character. So that no matter what you do, despite if it is tolerable or intolerable, if it's for need, you have the character to sustain yourself. You not only have the character to sustain yourself, you have a working and living philosophy of the living God within you to further sustain you through whatever you need sustaining in, to get through whatever you need to get through. That's the benefit of the gendered experience. That's the benefit of a gendered personal devotional experience. The purpose for the sake of identity. When our conversation is allowed to find its identity, how it relates to the living God and how the scriptures relate to it, the experience becomes personal. The experience becomes worthwhile. The experience becomes everything and more. You're no longer doing to do, like you're now researching within the scriptures and experiencing and exercising what you've researched for joy. For joy. You're doing everything now for joy. You've separated the scriptures and the living God for joy. And it is through that joy that we as human beings get to grow and to develop and to understand more of this life. The constriction that the traditional, stereotypical religious experience is, it kind of chains us to a type of reality that is harmful. We don't realize it. As children not realizing what's wrong for them, so too our belief, our conversation. We don't understand what's wrong for it. But the more that we spend time with the scriptures, which is our original concern is the mind within the Bible. Spending more time with that mind will begin to learn its culture. Learning its culture, because it feeds wisdom to our inward person, we will begin to learn the culture of who we are. And I think that's important. There's philosophy, there's wisdom, there's speech, there's everything connected to the Bible, parable, allegory, anything and everything is connected to the Bible, sure, on an intellectual level. But the experience isn't just supposed to be intellectual. It's supposed to be also philosophical. Experience is also supposed to be holistic. The experience is also supposed to be spiritual. And these terms, we really take them out of context presently, but the experience is supposed to be inward. Sure, there may be the conscience of the conversation being free. That doesn't mean free to do all. It means free to do without restraint. In the sense of learning, in the classroom, the higher education offered by the mind within the Bible, free to experience that. That means free to mess up, most importantly, because that's necessary. We need to fail when it comes to understanding the mind within the scriptures. And that's something that I find when I speak to different individuals about where they intend to take their experience. One of the problems that comes up is I don't want to fail. I don't want to appear stupid. I don't want to be not knowing what to do. The idea of failing in the experience. But then I also have to remind them that you have been in an experience that hasn't been fulfilling and has been a failing experience. Were you afraid then? Were you afraid of the failing experience while you were in that experience? Because you've been in a failing experience. It has not catered to you intellectually or philosophically or spiritually or holistically. It has actually caused you to dislike it due to how much it did not prepare you for an outcome that you were expecting. So should failure really be an issue? If we could put that into perspective, failure is not the issue. Fear may be an issue, but then it shouldn't because it falls under that same context of that failure from the former experience. So there's a lot of doubt of self. There is a lot working in the mind when it comes to how to approach the scriptures and how to just let it be, when really it's simply like blood flowing through the veins, water passing through a stream with a rock at the center of it. Water isn't bothered by that rock. That's the same thing. Allowing our conversation to be means and is meaning allowing our conversation to pass through experiences that it doesn't know so that it can then begin to know. There's no such thing as doing right, doing wrong. You learn through failure. There's no handbook. There's no handbook. Part of the comfort that comes from a religious experience is that the action, the deed, and the behavior is already told to you. And so all you have to do is do it. But how limiting is that? And how limiting has that been for you? Again, not speaking to everyone, but to the particular individual tuned in. Well, there's more. That's not that right experience, at least not for you. The norm is not normal. And as we've seen throughout the scriptures, according to the Bible, we can confirm that. Even the Bible lets us know that the norm isn't the norm. Again, how can I say this? Just using the brief example of the crucifixion, of how the book of Galatians, also in the book of Romans, and also in the book of Ephesians, the one hanging, crucified, that body is not actually literally looked at as a literal physical body or natural body. That body is representing a philosophy. And most definitely, those books and those authors break down that philosophy to be the philosophy of the religious law, where we see this body crucified, we are seeing the philosophy of the religious law crucified. That's letting us know that with the philosophy of the religious law being an experience where righteousness, piety, favor, so on and so forth are dictated to the individual conscience by baptisms, by rites, by ceremonies, by theories, by commandments, so on and so forth, that crucified is letting us know that that's false. So letting us know that that's false, that means that there needs to be an exit from such an experience. And that exit from such an experience is the heart of the Bible letting us know that that's not the ordained experience for the conversation. Even if it is the one that our conversation is born into, fine. But once again, in order to have anything grow out of a ground, you need a ground. And so that body represents that ground, but with it crucified or broken up, what sprouts up is a new experience. That's why it says in Hebrews 4, put off your former conversation, be renewed in the spirit of your mind, put on the new mind or the new man, which is created. There's a process. And as I said, maybe weeks ago, talking about skin in the game, we need some skin in the game. We are willingly allowed to have our minds deceived about our religious experience so that we can have some skin in the game, so that by the time the living God allows us to recognize that that needs to suffer a loss, we can feel that pain hard enough to where something important can sprout from that pain. That's that ground. Our skin in the game is the ground of our belief that we have inherited or adopted. The instrument, the tilling instrument of the Bible, is supposed to be used to break up that ground so that what can sprout from it is a genuine character, a genuine devotional character. Allowing the inward person of our conversation to rationalize itself. Well, now that inward person can be what it's supposed to be. And from going through that experience, we are now able to understand the gender of our belief, which gender we get from the words within the scripture. It is the Bible that gives our conversation, or that allows our conversation to gender into what it's supposed to be. And if we can allow those words to do that, if we can just let our conversation be with those words as they're supposed to, well, then we will be able to take steps that at first we were fearful of, but now they have become a lifestyle. Now, what has sprouted from our broken up ground of belief is something that resonates with us. It's something that we know is for us. It's something that we know is unique to our individual human being. And being unique to our individual human being, it's beyond satisfactory. This is the process of what the Bible calls justification. And again, justification, meaning another word for that is sanctification, which is meaning cleansing. Well, in order to pass through cleansing, you have to have some dirt on you, right? You got to have some dirt on you. Nothing grows without dirt. Got to have some dirt on you. The ground of our belief that we have inherited, our denominated theory and understanding, that's the ground of dirt. And what's supposed to rise up out of that ground of dirt is the heart and the mind of the genuine conversation. That's the rising. That's the regeneration. Our conversation, initially without any knowledge of religion or anything, but something led us to have a concern about the scriptures. Something led us to have a concern about the scriptures, and we took what led us to have a concern about the scriptures and we buried it in denominated theory. It was buried under the ground of denominated theory. Whatever denominated theory we chose and that fit our lifestyle, we buried it. It was buried in that ground. Well, what's supposed to happen is that our conversation, what was placed into that ground, what we hid in that ground, ignorantly, it is supposed to resurrect and break that ground, not in ignorance, but in understanding. So you can see where the illustration of that crucifixion is coming from. It's also a pattern of the experience. Again, we have taken and we have hid our genuine concern for the scriptures within the ground of denominated religious traditional stereotypical understanding. It's hidden under there. But what's supposed to happen is that our conversation is to resurrect or is to regenerate from that ground a being in and of its own self. And as a being in and of its own self, no longer depending on that ground, but depending on the words of the experience that caused it to rise up. That's the gendered experience that breaks the stereotype of the traditional religious outcome. And that's what the Bible's calling for us to do practically and personally for our own self. And so, with that thought, I will end there. That what we do this week, always for the sake of creation, but with it in mind, that whatever is going through is a step closer for the body of our belief to rise up out of the ground that we have suppressed it in. Everything adding up or moving forward to the resurrection or to the regeneration of the body of our belief from the ground that we have suppressed or submerged our conversation in.